Are you there, Governor? Governor Walz. Hi there. Thank you.
Hey, Jimmy. Did you get the venison jerky I sent you?
Oh, no, I don't think I did get that.
I sent it in an old shoebox.
No, I'm sorry I didn't get it, I guess.
Hi, I'm Anna Marie Cox, and this is Another Day with Anna Marie Cox, a show about surviving and thriving in this moment in time. And today's guest is Andy Richter. He is the host of 3 Questions with Andy Richter and the Andy Richter Call-In Show. I managed to get all of that without tripping up my tongue. I'm glad to have someone else on here who just puts their name in everything that they do. So
you might as well, Bob. You might as well.
There was the Andy Richter Show. There's 3 Questions with Andy Richter. The Andy Richter Call-In Show.
And I'm not that big of an egomaniac either. It's just, it tends to be what the people that are paying me to do things want. They want, it's like it's a call-in show with me. And they talked about different cute titles. I was like, no, I think Andy Richter Call-In Show, because I have had experience with naming things. Like my first solo television show was Andy Richter Controls the Universe, which I picked. And
I love that show so much. I've told you, I love it.
Thank you.
So
and
good.
But I picked that title because they insisted that my name be in it, which I was a little sheepish about because I thought, what if it sucks? I don't want my name on something that sucks. But they insisted. And so I thought, well, I'll pick, and they literally paid some consultancy firm $1 zillion to come up with 100 terrible titles. And then I just came up with 10, and they picked from the 10. And I wanted it to be something so grandiose that no one could take it seriously. So, and it also had to get the idea that we were dealing with an unreliable narrator. So the story could be told in Rashomon kind of ways from different perspectives. So, because the original title was Anything Can Happen. So Andy Richter Controls the Universe, because I would be controlling how the story would go. But everybody gets it wrong. It's a terrible title. Nobody can remember it correctly. So I just learned, that's not that. I'm not that good at it.
Talking about how weird it is that things that we enjoyed are now old.
Yes.
How long ago was Andy Richter Controls the Universe?
Going on 25 years ago. Yeah. Because it was, well, I'll say, 24 years ago. Well, I'll shave a year off because it was 2001 when we really started doing it.
So all the youngs listening are like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah. No, I mean, it survives out there. There are a lot of people that still reference it and that still enjoy it, but I don't know how available it is. Which is, like one of those things like now that it just seems like, why isn't everything available somewhere? Everything that, you can go on Spotify or whatever and find ancient songs and they're getting pretty good at there's not a lot of dusty oldies that you can't find on Spotify. So why can't you just, what's the harm of putting these it's like nobody's going to be making a mint out of them just for the public good. Why not put them out? But the public good doesn't matter that much.
Maybe this is our smooth transition to talking about Twitter.
Okay. Okay.
Now, okay, you're best known as being like a sidekick, I think.
Yes.
Although
yes,
other
absolutely.
people might know you from Andy Richter Controls the Universe.
No, it would be with Conan. That would be the main way that I would be known. So, I don't have any qualms about that. I'm proud of that.
Yeah, well, you were one of the all-time great sidekicks, honestly. Like,
thank you.
Turned it into your own thing. I appreciated it. But the way that I got to know you was on Twitter.
Yeah.
And you had a lot of followers. And you used it in a way that I thought was interesting. And I think in a way that a lot of us sort of maybe lefty types did. But I found surprising with you, which is like you were hilarious, but also really serious about what you believed in.
Yes. Yeah. No. I'm not even, I tend to be very, and you will relate, very Midwestern. So I'm very sort of pretension averse. So whenever I hear famous people say, I just feel if my story can help someone else out there, it just sounds so grandiose and so self-serving. But there was the reality of the fact that because I was on a television show that people watched, and because I got onto Twitter and sort of was into Twitter, I enjoyed it. It was fun. And I worked at it in terms of I shared a lot of jokes. I mean, for me, it was just like joke gym. I would go there to say funny things and then bounce off other funny people. I mean, I found a lot of people on there who are now my IRL friends. You being one of them. I mean, people that I got to know from this silly little marketplace of limited characters, and it was really a fun, vital place for a long time. And after I was there for a while, I felt like, why not use this as a place to inform people? I already have people's eyes and ears, so maybe I can tell them something they're not necessarily aware of, because there's not a lot of people who were as information and news obsessed as I was. So, and I felt like there is, with most issues, I never was trying, and I was just trying to persuade people to be a little more pro common sense gun laws, pro abortion rights, pro, health care reform, pro political reform in terms of Citizens United and things. So I just kind of it always to me there was the notion of persuasion and kind of getting people who didn't really care that much about common sense gun laws to go, oh, well, you know what? Like, most of the gun lobby's points about why we need guns are actually horseshit. And, and they're kind of easily debunked. And that, I just kind of felt like, well, I can do this too. And I really did try not to do it to a level of grandiosity. Like, I didn't want to bore people. I didn't want to annoy people that much. I knew I was annoying some people, and that, so what, and I also did want to always keep it mostly about my account about being fun and having fun. And I also kind of wanted it to stay. I mean, I promote stuff on it, but it's not a money-making thing. It's a fun thing. It's like, I make jokes where people that are around me, they're going to hear me making jokes. They're going to hear me trying to be funny. They're going to hear me trying to entertain. This is just like a more public version of that.
Right.
And I certainly, I saw some people who were celebrities first, whether they were actors or musicians or whatever, try to kind of cross into punditry and sort of, you could tell like, oh, you're trying to make money at saying political stuff. And I never, ever, I was like, I do not want to ever be paid to have political opinions.
So I'm going to, yes and no.
Okay. Well, I'm just saying for me.
For you. No,
yeah,
I meant like these other celebrities.
Yes.
So I was the back page interviewer for the New York Times Magazine for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I interviewed a lot of celebrities. But my background is politics. And there were some of them who would come to the interview knowing that was my thing.
Yeah.
And I cannot name names. However, so many times what they would start to do is start to like punditize with me, right?
Yeah.
Like show off. It wasn't even they were showing off. What was weird about it is that they were telling me their important political opinions.
Yes, like a compulsion, because they know that they can do it with you. Yeah.
But also, like, they weren't that interesting. Like, they were just kind of like garden variety liberal political opinions.
Yes.
And, I was kind of like, number one, like, don't don't play chess with a grandmaster. Sorry, but like,
yeah, no, I
like,
get it.
If you want to do this, we can do this, but like,
Yeah.
it's not you. One of us will get embarrassed.
Yes.
And also, I want to talk to you about like the craft of acting. Those were the most fascinating conversations I had, was when I talked to musicians and actors about what they were passionate about, their craft.
Yeah.
Like talking to musicians about still loving the act of creating music.
Yes.
And
Yep.
again, can't name any names,
and process questions are always fascinating, and it doesn't matter. Like, it could be a basketball player, it could be a concert violinist. Like, what do you do to do what you do is pretty interesting stuff.
Yeah. I one time asked a sports person, like, this actually didn't make it in, so I don't want to. What does it feel like? Like when you make that point, like when you have a great play.
Yeah.
Like, how does that feel? Like, I don't know. I'm fascinated by that.
Yeah.
And the response was, I always know. I know before it happens. Like, from the moment the ball leaves my hand, like, I know what's going to happen. So instead of like, woohoo, it's more like, okay.
Yep. Yeah.
Like, or not, if it doesn't work. Yeah. So anyway, and I found that stuff fascinating.
Yeah. And all those cliches about like in the zone or in the pocket, like you can, and I mean, and I've had it, with performing, especially with improv. Like, there would be times when I was doing improv all the time back in my youth where things had come out of my mouth that I didn't know where they came from. And they were like, and I'd be like, oh, that was really good. I don't know where that came from, but that was a good one, So there's all kinds of cliches for it, but yeah, it's a Zen thing.
So to bring it back to you and politics,
please.
What I admired about you and what you were doing with your social media, and this is what the celebrities I talked to didn't do, was speak to it from who they were.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I would be interested in the opinions if you're a Bernie supporter, I want to hear you talk about, I should be taxed more. Right.
Right.
Like, or if you are a person who is not a straight white man, or is not a minority, I should say, if you are straight cis white man,
cis white, yeah,
I want to hear you talk about representation, as in stepping out of the spotlight.
Yes.
Right. Then I wouldn't push that stuff, because that just makes people uncomfortable, honestly.
Yeah.
Like, that's not what the New York Times Magazine is.
Right. Especially the back page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, whatever, listen, that's fine. But what I appreciated about you was talking about being a straight white guy in Hollywood.
Yeah.
Right. And taking ownership. And also, if I recall correctly, you and Paul F. Tompkins were the people I remember being like, and Patton Oswalt, those jokes weren't funny anymore.
Yeah.
Like, this is not you can't make that joke anymore.
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, I mean, my point has always been, you can make whatever joke you want, but there will be consequences now, like, because times have changed. I did a guy, I did a bourbon podcast, and, because somebody that I knew was helping produce it and book it. And so I was like, okay, sure. And I like bourbon. Who doesn't like bourbon? I mean, well, some people can't like bourbon. It's
like it too much. That's my problem. Is I really love bourbon.
But the guy kind of, he framed it to me as like we both know that this wokeness is hurting comedy. And I said, no, I reject that notion. And I, it's just, to me, it's so transparent. And one of the things I said was like, you don't see anybody, like, blackface is considered a bad thing. Like, when you do blackface, it's bad. It used to be on TV. It used to be just like one of the ways that we were funny. I was just watching an old Scooby-Doo. Because I have a little one now. I have children in two waves. I have a 24-year-old son, a 19-year-old daughter, and a 4.5-year-old. She's going to be 5 in February. And we were watching an old Scooby-Doo, which I all my kids love Scooby-Doo, and I endorse it, and I still enjoy Scooby-Doo. And there was one that took place in Chinatown. And this is, I think, like 1968, something like that. So I was born in 66. It's within my lifetime. The parade of racist Asian tropes in this episode of Scooby-Doo is mind-blowing. And even like the most sort of how dare they kind of cishet male comedian would go, oh yeah, that you can't do that. That's too much. At the end, there's a mouse that comes out, a Chinatown mouse that comes out and steals a Scooby snack. It has, and I'm just sorry, it has slanted eyes, and its mouse noise sounds like racist Asian gobbledygook. Like even the mouse is racist in Scooby-Doo. And you just, so it's like, yes, we evolve. We don't do that anymore. And you know, and the one that I brought up is, because when I started on the Conan show in 93, we were still using the word, you know, the hurtful word for little people that begins with an M. And that was a comedy trope, often a lazy one. When you're looking for a laugh, throw in that word.
Yeah.
And I found out, oh, that hurts people's feelings. Oh, all right. I don't need to use that word, you know? I mean, I don't have to do that. And I do understand, because when I was on Twitter, there were some jokes that I made that people took offense at. And I had a bit of, how dare you? You know, like, I am a comedian. I am, you know, I have a sworn duty to poke holes in pretension. But then you get off the other side of it, and it's like, what is it costing me to not, you know, make a joke in that particular vein, or to just, you know, to just let that go? Like, okay, it offends somebody. You learn, like, all right, do I want to? And even if you feel like the taking of offense is a little bit much,
Right.
it's like, do you want to deal with that? Like, do you want to, like, you know, it's slightly passive aggressive, but it's like when there's somebody in your life and there's a topic, you know, that'll get them all riled up. It's like, you know, I don't care. I'll leave that topic alone just because I don't want the hassle. So there's all kinds of other things to be funny about, and all kinds of other things to make jokes about. And the other thing I like to think about too is that, like, the groups that these guys, and they are mostly guys, the groups that these guys want to make jokes about are not above these guys. They're always below them in terms of power, and in terms of the ability to
Cultural capital.
to live a healthy, successful, you know, uncluttered life. They have it much tougher. So why are you picking on these people that have it a lot tougher than you? Isn't there other? And a lot of times it's just because it's limited. And I said this too, it's because they want to be like the old guys, the old sort of, you know, Dean Martin celebrity roast guys who could say whatever the hell they wanted and not have any blowback. And it's like, well, then you just need a time machine, because that doesn't happen anymore.
Okay. We're going to swerve into punditry, because in this last election, that happened.
Yes.
I mean, it is interesting. Like, I guess I could turn to you almost as like the expert on Gen X, straight, cis, white men, because you know who voted for Trump?
I know.
Not you.
Yeah. No, I don't. But people that look like me, people who are wearing Cubs fleece vests, Chicago Cubs.
A lot of half zips.
Yeah.
A lot of half zips.
A lot of Henleys. Yeah, the Henley vote.
And you're not an expert. You can't speak to everyone. But I do think it's interesting to think about the reactions. And maybe you do have some insight of a generation that loved Sonic Youth.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I guess the white people especially. Like, I do want to be careful, because there's a lot of people who are technically in Gen X but aren't straight white guys. Who maybe didn't love Sonic Youth and the Beastie Boys quite as much.
Right.
But but they wound up voting. The people who voted, and again, that's actually an important point too. Some people stayed home, voted for Trump. And I do suspect it has to do with some, at least, wokeness. Like, do you see that? Does that make sense to you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the reasons that I think the election went the way they are all hunches, are all they're all based on just kind of instinctual sort of zeitgeist reading. And I could be completely wrong. I'm not a sociologist. I don't have data to back it up.
No one does, and they're writing op-eds anyway.
That's true.
So
that's true. Well, the first and foremost thing is that people, and this I cannot imagine, and this is, I have referred to myself as a feminist, which people who just roll their eyes out of their skulls that I would call myself a feminist. And my point is I don't know what else you refer to, how else you refer to yourself as someone who thinks that women have the shit end of the stick and have throughout history and continue to, even though there's been progress made. It's still, if I were a woman, I would be rigid with rage about the basic inequality that exists in human society. So I acknowledge that. I recognize that. I try to alleviate that in my little ways in my little life. So I don't know what else you want to call me, feminist. That's what I call it. So it's because she was a woman. People do not want mommy to tell them what to do, especially these men. They are done with mommy. No, I don't want a mommy. I can have dad. Dad will tell me what to do. And I'm used to that because I can relate to dad because I'm that sort of simplistic. Yeah, dad. Okay, dad's in charge. Yeah, that means maybe someday I'll be in charge. But if mommy's in charge, I'm never going to be mommy. Ugh, what the fuck, So I think it must be incredibly debilitating to be a woman right now, more so than other times. Especially, I can't imagine being a Republican woman and knowing that, like, seeing it again. Boy, when are we ever going to have a woman run this country? It seems like, okay, we're still decades away from it. We're still that stupid and still that undeveloped emotionally and mentally as a people. And the other thing is yes, I think there are people, and it is not rational, it is not adult, it is not mature, but I think there are a lot of people who are like, I'm sick of all these drag queens. I'm sick of all this gay stuff. I'm sick of all these commercials where they have mixed race couples. I'm sick of it. Like, they're just sick of the transition from the old world to the new world. And the new world is coming. It's putting the brakes on something, on a glacier. It's trying to, like, dig your heels in on a glacier. It moves slow, but it's moving. And it's gonna, I don't know what to do about that. What I have done about that is I've stopped watching the news. I haven't paid attention to politics since like November 6th. I have just decided I'm going to take care of me and mine. And I know people can say, like, no, we've got to fight. Like, no. I mean, I'll still give money and stuff, but I was involved in a sport that I found out, like, either my team is so fucked up that they just are never going to win, or the other, like, I'm just really disappointed with the American people, and I do not want to. I'm done with politics for a while. I feel like I tried really hard. I'm not an activist, but within the scope of my life, I put a lot of effort and money and time into trying to get things to be better, and nobody wants that. And All right. All right. I mean, this is just a now. I don't think I'm going to be this way for the rest of my life, but it does feel very, I don't know if feudal is exactly, if it's feudal but it's close to feudal. It's close to like, I don't know how redeemable this place is.
I know people who feel that way.
Yeah.
A lot of them are straight white guys.
Yeah.
There is a luxury to tapping out.
Oh, I know. I'm not,
and I also hear you when you say it's not going to be forever.
Yeah.
But I want to be able to acknowledge like that's a real thing for you and for other people to feel alienated. And there's some women too, don't get me wrong. But also like, I mean, I really kind of wanted to talk about the transition to blue sky, but you know, I learned over time, and maybe you did on Twitter too, that I needed to have the people I follow be incredibly diverse, right?
Yeah.
I needed to find people of color, indigenous people, disabled people, because I find out so much more.
I absolutely, like, I used to talk to people about like things that I'd heard on Black Twitter. I like Black people. I'd say like, oh, I heard about this. And they'd be like, how do you know about that? And I'd say, on Black Twitter. I follow a lot of people on Black Twitter. And they'd be like, what are you doing? And I'm like, why wouldn't I? You know, you get to eavesdrop on people that are different than you. And if you like people, that's a fun, wonderful thing to do, you know? So
you've probably seen some of the same voices that I have saying like, don't tap, you take care of yourself.
Yes.
We have to think long-term.
Yes.
Right.
No, I know.
And we can't give up on the American experiment, because imagine if, for instance, people who were brought to this country against their will, whose parents were owned by other people and owned by other people and owned by other people, if they'd been like pointless, we lost.
Yeah.
You know, talk about odds feeling insurmountable, right? Talk about feeling like your country is broken to a point where why even bother? Like, I mean, I interviewed Peggy Flanagan before the election, but we talked pretty frankly about whatever way it would go.
Yeah.
Right? And, you know, she's an indigenous person, and she was like, I am here because my mother fought, my mother's mother fought, my mother's 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 fought, my mother's mother, you know, like that there is a who kept pushing, who never stopped thinking that if they kept pushing, things would make a difference. And I say that just for context, because I really wanted to talk to you. I mean, I think most of all about mental health and like tapping, like, I think self-care is the most important thing people can do right now.
Yeah.
So like I said, I feel like for me personally, like I want to validate the kind of feelings that you're having, but also
you're absolutely right to point out that there's a lot I live a life of luxury, and often online I felt like I would have to put that as a disclaimer before everything I ever said.
I mean, I wish people kind of didn't have to do that.
Like, but they do, because you say something like I used to say things that would be in favor of income equality, or things that would be sort of like, hey, poor people need help. And I would get, well, what the fuck do you know about it? You're rich. And I would sort of be like, well, how helpful is that? Does that mean, so if you,
that's a little different. Like,
but you know what I mean? It's like, but it's still that like people decide whether or not you can speak to something because of who you are, what your demographic is. But yes, no, you are absolutely right to point out the luxuries that I enjoy, and I am very much aware of them. You know, but I also, I don't know what to do with the disappointment that I feel. And I also too, you know, I saw, I still am I'm trying to mirror the same experience I had on Twitter, on Blue Sky, and follow a lot of different people. And after the election too, I was still sort of had my toe in Twitter. And after the election, I looked a little bit. And one of the things I saw, and it was in in sort of a more black space, if you will, somebody saying what I basically said, but it was an African American person saying, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm just going to keep my head down and take care of me and mine. And that's sort of what I'm saying. And I think that that's also, too, that's something I've heard from black people over the years about, like, where a white person would say, wow, this is really fucked up. And this black person would say, yeah, no shit. Yeah, you know, like, yeah, so you just keep going. You just keep living your life and you keep doing the right thing. And that's sort of what I mean more. I don't mean like I'm checking out, you know, but although I don't know if things get a certain way, my wife has a UK passport, so that's always a possibility.
I feel like I am in this place where I'm just so trying to acknowledge the hurt.
Yeah.
And also, I guess for me, again, coming from a place of privilege, but I can't, like, my way forward is at least to be able to know that taking care of me and mine, and actually especially me, is part of being in a place where if it gets worse, I can take care of other people.
Yeah.
And maybe things will get so bad, and we've talked about this, and I don't know if it's true or not, like, I don't know. But if things get so bad that we're like in Underground Railroad kind of situations, like, you know, and it's scary, but kind of imaginable, like, I want to be doing okay enough, you know, that I'm able to participate in that kind of thing.
Yes, that you can help. Yeah.
Not me personally. And anyway, like, it.
Yeah.
And I also, like, there was a thing, like, a lot of black women being like, we're done, like, right after the election, like you're sort of saying, like, we're done. Like, they were just like, we're out. And you have to sort of create space for, like, that reaction. And it's a genuine reaction. And also your reaction. It's a genuine reaction. And then also just, like, me being like, come on.
Come on, everybody. No, I know. I know.
Let's live to fight another day. That's the other way to frame it.
And that's, and that's gonna happen, you know. Yeah. When I, like, for instance, in terms of, like, there was another, when I was going through my divorce, I checked out of politics, and it was 2019, and I checked out of politics for, you know, in terms of, like, I didn't put on the news. In fact, I rarely watch. I listened to music for some reason. I checked out for a while, and I came back, is the point.
I have to ask you, there's another reason I thought you might be sad that the election went the way that it did. You lost a 4-year gig.
Possibly. Yes. And I was thinking of that. Yeah. What, listeners, what she's referring to is the fact that, I got tapped by Jimmy Kimmel to play Tim Walz in a bit. Thank you. No, I was sort of
wonderful. I know Jim Gaffigan did great, but, like, I think you have a Tim Walz vibe. Maybe it's just again because I know you. Like, yeah. But.
Well, I did feel like when he was picked, there were a lot of people, I mean, strangers online going like, you should do it. And I thought, well, like, because it was for Who Does It on SNL. And I just sort of was like, well, there's a bunch of people in line ahead of me to go to be in New York and be on SNL. But then when Jimmy had it, because he had Haley Joel Osment, who's a friend of mine, do JD Vance. So he had already, like, and there's a really, really great clip you should look up of him at a donut shop. And he plays it so weird and so strange. So I did this one bit and I was kind of, but Jimmy Kimmel doesn't do a lot of that kind of stuff. But I thought, like,
I got to jump in about Haley Joel Osment here.
Yeah.
Because the brilliance of that is you're friends. So I don't mean this with any disrespect, but he had the same otherworldly vibe, like uncanny valley vibe.
Yeah. Yes.
That JD Vance has. Like, I'd never kind of put, like, JD Vance is Uncanny Valley, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
he looks kind of like an automaton, a little bit weird.
Or has a vibe of an alien replicating human behavior.
And again,
and Joel can do
your
that.
friend,
Haley can do that. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a thing he can do. I won't presume that unlike JD Vance, when you guys are talking, you're like, what is wrong with this guy?
Yeah.
So anyway, you were saying, I just had to.
I would kind of was, believe me, it was in my mind, like, and it's not a ton of money, but it's fun. It's a fun thing to get to go and do. And the bit that I did was with, they just had James Adomian, who does an amazing My Pillow guy impersonation. So he and I got to do it together. But yeah, it was cut short. It's pretty far down the list of like reasons I'm disappointed with the way the election went. But it definitely, you're right, it is there.
Yeah, I do want to get in swerve in topics, but you talked a lot about your mental health and challenges there, and I think for me, what I want to get in before we're done, it can be kind of short, is the speed with which one should reach out if you're in trouble. Like, I think it should be pretty fast. And I
think so too. One thing that has always been, and I have to credit my mother with this. My mother was always very open to what we called family counseling, which was basically therapy. And from when I was a little kid and I was adjusting, my parents divorced when I was 4. She got remarried when I was about 9. And there was some real difficult, and we moved. So there was all kinds of changes, and I had difficulty adjusting to a lot of these changes, as did many of the people in our family, but me especially. And I think she also recognized something that she had in herself, which is depressive tendencies. And those were starting to become evident at the age of 12 in that neighborhood. So I started learning about what they call the talking cure, at a very early age. So there was never any stigma to it. There was never any sort of like embarrassment about it. And I, to this day, am amazed by people. I cannot conceive. I mean, there are sort of basically genuinely essentially happy people. Like, they just are lucky. They got dealt a really great hand, and they're just kind of happy. And they're few and far between, but they do exist. But I think even they could benefit from sitting and talking to somebody, to sitting and talking to a objective third party, outside of their life, that they could sort of bounce ideas about what's going on and why I'm like this and how can it be better. And I don't understand any hesitance about that kind of thing. If anything, everybody could use a little bit more of it. And certainly if you're in pain, that's the other thing. If you fell off the roof and you had a bone sticking out of your leg, you'd go to the ER. You wouldn't walk around on it and go like, no, it's fine. I'll get over it. It's a character flaw that I can't get over, the fact that there's a bone sticking out of my leg. No, you would go, I'm sick. This is painful. This is not good for me. I need help. And I think the same thing exists in mental health realm too.
Yeah. I'm interested that you kind of hesitated a little bit when I said the speed with which you should reach out.
Yeah.
Is that a hesitation that I like? Where did that hesitation come from?
I don't know. I mean, I guess. Well, it's probably. I mean, all of the things that like when you talk about me being a cis het man and and understanding the privilege of that and sort of speaking to why someone like me would need to move beyond that to understand the world and just understand other people. I still have the thoughts of a cishet white man. I still have the programming of a small town white person. So there are things that happen out in the world that I, on a reflexive level, feel like the people that don't go beyond the reflexive level. Like when there was that, I forget his name, but that thing that, don't try that in a small town
Oh yeah,
song.
yeah. Those are-
And they
yeah.
tried to say like, oh no, that's not what it's about. I felt like, no. I know that that's what that's about. Like, don't bullshit me. You're talking to where I came from and where my milieu growing up. So I know what you mean. And there's a lot of stuff, even so with this mental health thing, like, should I reach out? There's still part of me that's like, kind of try and dig in and see if you can't figure it out yourself. There's still that exists in me, that's like the reflexive urge that I have to go, no, that probably doesn't work, and that's probably, I don't know. It's a complicated swirl of things of, oh yes, seek out mental health, talk openly about mental health. And then there's the other one. There's the kind of curmudgeonly part of me that has a distaste with oversharing. Like it's they two things coexist in me, and I just have to live with them.
Yeah. I just wound up writing an essay about this, which had to do with when I sometimes also feel like, oh, my problems, first world problems, like able-bodied problems, like, but I also think that there's value in talking about them because, and I did a story about national trauma where I interviewed this woman called Dope, who goes by Dope Social Worker, and was talking to her about like racial trauma and stuff. But what she wound up pointing out to me is that like all pain is the same.
Yeah.
And a broken bone is a broken bone is a broken bone. And it does no one any good to be like, well, my broken bone's not, like, it's broken.
Yeah.
And it's broken and it hurts as much as yours, which is broken also. But don't worry about me.
Right.
Like, we all got to get our bones set.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
but we also can't say mine's much worse than yours. Like that,
it's sort of like they're the same.
There's
issue.
two sides of that. Yeah. Right.
There's them not. Yeah. Exactly. There's recognizing each other's pain, and also when it can be different, like when it can be different.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
So, but we all have to take an examination of it and have to show it to each other, because you can't be like, no, mine's worse. I'm not going to show it to you, but mine's worse.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I also too, like I'm a deep believer in therapy and in all of this stuff, but then I have had friends throughout my life that just won't stop. It's like, sweetheart, not every moment is a therapy session. You got to get off the clock now and then.
Unlike this.
Yeah.
This is actually.
Well, this is a podcast. This is different. Okay. But like when you go to lunch, like you also can talk about baseball, or you can talk about, your work. Fair. Or you can talk about recipes. You don't have to always talk about, why am I like this? You need to give yourself a break.
I'm working on that. Okay, you mentioned podcast.
Yes.
You have a podcast where you ask every guest the same 3 questions. Where are you come from? Where are you going? What have you learned?
Yeah, not explicitly, but that's the idea.
All right. Yeah. So maybe hard to sum up as we wrap, but I won't ask you those 3 questions. Maybe another day.
Okay.
What have you learned from asking those similar questions from so many different people?
Well, first of all, it's a lot. There is, and sometimes I take it as a fault. There can be a similarity to a lot of the people, in that I talk to a lot of comedy people. I talk to a lot of performers, and and there's a lot of there's a lot of variation in terms of demographics within that, but I talk to a lot of comedy people. And what is interesting to me is how similar, regardless of the color of their skin or their, gender identity, et cetera, there are very similar things, which is growing up, feeling weird, needing to find your tribe. And that is just like almost everybody I talk to that left the somewhere where they come from and got to a place that fit them better. Finding your tribe is a huge, huge, huge thing. One of the biggest things that you can do, which, just to me speaks to the fact that we are social animals. That's the kind of ape we are. We need each other. We need a group. Alone, we don't know ourselves. I think we really start to know ourselves when we bounce up against people and find out who's similar. And then you can look at them and say, oh, I see that in me. And they do the same with you. So that's a big one. And also the other one because a lot of times what we talk about is kind of career things, because that's sort of the more polite topic. And some people are willing to get into more personal things, but I don't want to pry. I'm not in, I don't want people to be uncomfortable for content for my podcast,
Midwesterner in you.
Yeah. But but the one thing, and I love it, that is a through line for many of them is the notion of faking it till you make it. Like nobody knows what they're doing. So you just try and have enough faith in yourself to kind of like, oh, okay. The way I look at it is always, if people are going to assume that I am capable of something, it would be rude for me to dissuade them of that. So I'm going to go, yes, you're right. I can do that, just out of politeness. And then you find out if you go through that situation a few times, you do realize, oh yeah, I can do this. I can figure this out.
So, Andy, it has been, we should actually speak more often.
Okay. Definitely.
You are a delight.
Oh,
you really
thank
are.
you, Anna. Thank you so much.
And I will remind people you're the host of 3 Questions with Andy Richter, and I've given away those 3 questions, and also the Andy Richter call-in show. In case people forget your name, it is Andy Richter.
It's on Sirius XM radio. And that one's just fun. That one's just, I have a guest host and we have different silly topics. We're doing wedding. Atsuko Akatsuka and I are doing wedding stories this week. So people just call in with their wedding stories and hopefully they are messy because that's always the most fun.
You don't want to hear about mine went really well?
It's all right. I can tell you about my second marriage. At my second wedding, my mother face planted, which on her way to get cake, in her frenzy to get cake. And I don't mean to make light of this, but she does have a knack for centering herself. I'll just say that.
Okay. This show has been another day.
By the way, kudos to your graphics team.
I know. Thanks. It's me. I'm my graphics team. So,
nice.
Yeah, this is enough for YouTube, right?
Sure, of course.
It's another day with Anna Marie Cox, where we talk about getting through another day with smart, interesting, sensitive people. And my guest has been Andy Richter. And thanks again. This is a podcast. And if you enjoyed it, you can get it on YouTube and watch us and see that the thing I waved and see my Sonic Youth parody shirt.
And also appreciate that your engineer made me straighten up the wainscoting behind me because it had been like this.
It had been like that.
It was very troublesome.
You can also see my Star Wars wallpaper.
It's excellent wallpaper. I love it.
Yeah. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can listen to it as a podcast. Thanks again.
All right.
Producing Andy Richter Controls the Universe, a new comedy premiering Tuesday, March 19th on Fox.
Get the full story and so much more at patreon.com/AnnaMarieCox. Join the community today.